So here we go. Hello and welcome to the Default Profitable Podcast, the show where we dive deep into strategies behind building and growing consistently profitable businesses. If you're a founder, a leader, just a curious builder starting to dream, podcast is a toolbox for making profitability a default setting, not a lucky outcome. I'm your host, Matt Nettleton. Today, my guest is Gerry Bailey. Gerry, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So listen, we don't really know each other. We were introduced through mutual contacts at Citizen State Bank, which is a great local bank. Why don't you take 2 or 3 minutes, introduce your personal side, where you are, who you are, where you're from, a little bit about your family, and then we'll get into your business. How's that sound?
No, that sounds great. That sounds great. So, Gerry Bailey, I'm the owner and CEO of a company called Corvano. Corvano's name came from I was in the Air Force for a good chunk of time, and Corvano actually stands for Core Values Now. So that's where he came up with the name. Just turned 60 this year. So it's kind of a milestone point in my life right now, making some different decisions about business than maybe I did in the past. I'm from Indiana. I was a born and bred Hoosier. Grew up in Marion, Indiana, 1984 graduate up there. So I saw some of the best basketball that's ever come out of Marion in that time frame. Being a Gen Xer right smack in the middle of the 80s was a fantastic time to be in Marion. Really was. It was a lot of fun. I have been with my wife, Carol, for 42 years now. She is actually one of my best friends from high school. Her younger brother, Evan, he and I have known each other since junior high school. And then I knew the rest of her family actually before I knew her. She has an older sister who was a teacher who came in and student taught at the high school when I was a senior, and her parents were actually teachers at the high school as well. And her father was my guidance counselor. My wife and I went out on our first date the day that I graduated high school in June 1st of 1984. We've been together since then. We've got 4 kids, Kay, Andrew, Luke, and Daniel. We're right in birthday time of year, so I have to think about their ages. So Kay is 36, Andrew is 33, Luke is 32, and Daniel is 30. And this is his birthday month, so he will be 31 July 19th, and then Andrew will turn 34. So for 2 weeks, that sounds like they're 1 year apart. Was in the Air Force for 12 years, from 87 to 99. And lived in 11 houses in 12 years while we were having kids. The 80s were a time they really like to move folks around. I went into the Air Force under Ronald Reagan and left under Bill Clinton. So the two ends of the spectrum couldn't have been farther apart. So we moved back to Indianapolis, Fishers actually, in 1999. Kids all graduated from, my daughter was the last class to graduate jointly from Hamilton Southeastern High School. And Andrew, my eldest son, was the first class that was a full class that did it all 4 years at Fishers High School.
Yeah, nice.
My kids are all music people, and so we're pretty house full of music. I was a scoutmaster for 14 years with my boys. My daughter earned her silver rank, and my boys, none of them made it to Eagle, but they all made it to life. And my wife and my kids are my best friends. So very fortunate guy.
Awesome. Yeah. So why did you start your business? Or when did you start your business? Let's start there.
Yeah, that's a great question. So getting out of the Air Force, when I got out in 99, I was 33 years old, and went to work for Sprint at the time. And Sprint had a professional services group that they had purchased, a company called Paranet, and I'd learned what P&L was, right? And I thought it was the letters P&L. And I remember asking the folks, what does this P&L stand for? No, it's profit and loss. And so I started working I was a project manager, network engineer to start, moved into service delivery as a manager, and then I moved into this role when the title first came out of solution architect, and got onto a leverage compensation plan. So that's where I gave up some of my salary for an upside, and I never looked back. And so was at Sprint for 5 years, and then I went to a company called Haverstick Consulting. I was there for a couple of years. And then I commuted to Washington, D.C. for 2 years. And worked for an Alaskan Native corporation out there. Came back and worked for a company here in town as a CIO, a company called Fifth Gear that was eventually acquired, and then moved into the first time I ran a company was a company called iLab here in town. I ran that company from 2010 to 2000. I grew that company there were 4 consultants at iLab when I got there, and by the time I left, we were over 160 and about 20 million a year in revenue. And along the way, realized that I was making a lot of money for other people. I did really well. I did really well at iLab. But in 2016, I started looking at what was going on. And I'm being a veteran. Most of my work has always been in the public sector. I do a lot of work with the state of Indiana, and there was this thing called a veteran business enterprise at the time. It's now called an Indiana veteran-owned small business, and the state has some particular categories that you can compete in as a veteran business. And I started looking at that and thinking, well, I should probably do something like that. So in 2016, while I was still at iLab and things were going well, I founded the business, and at the time we were looking at making it a part of another family of companies, and that didn't work out. So at the end of 2019, I decided I was going to strike out on my own, and had the worst timing on the planet. I left December 31st of 2019, and I had in that time frame, in the 9 years that I was with iLab, it was founded over in South Africa. I did 30 trips to Johannesburg from 2010 to 2019, as well as we bought a business in Brazil. We relaunched our business in Australia. We relaunched our business in the UK. We kind of changed our whole operating model. And I really learned I kind of had a talent for growing things at the time. And so I was going to go on my own, and I was going to take first quarter of 2020 off to give myself a little bit of breather. Well, we all did more than take first quarter of 2020 off.
Yes, we
And
did.
and so 2020 and 2021, Corvano was, I did cats and dogs consulting, as I like to say, to keep food on the table, because I couldn't give work away. It was rough. And, I think, rule number one of any small business is revenue, as well as rules number 2 and 3, right? So if it's location, location, location in real estate, it's revenue, revenue, revenue in a small business. Like, the number one thing you do is generate revenue and squash costs. If you can't figure that out, if you don't have that in mind, don't start a business, right? There's no reason to start it. Got to the end of 2021, couldn't give work away. And so I decided I was going to go work for another company. And that lasted about 9 months. And I was a national business developer for the company, and the leadership really struggled to grow a business. They thought they were going to, it was the first time I had got involved with a private equity firm. They misunderstood the business model. And while we were, I had a $5 million quota. I closed a $6.5 million deal in the first 4 months, and they panicked because they didn't have enough people to deliver it. Got to the middle of the year and went, man, I got to go work for myself again. So found a contract, right? I found one contract with the state of Indiana, and the company at the time did Salesforce implementation. So Salesforce and all the associated products, Salesforce,
Yep.
MuleSoft, Tableau, Marketing Cloud, all those tools. And so one of the things that I really like to do when I plow into a business is really understand it kind of stem to stern. And so I kicked it off, and it was just me by myself billing. I had a bunch of clients around the state of Indiana, and I kind of disappeared from 2019 to 2023, and I plugged back into the market, and my former clients went, where did you go? What did you do? And so we had this story, and they're like, wow, we'd really like you to, you're doing Salesforce stuff, huh? Come help us with this. And so my eldest son, Andrew, had worked for me previously. He was at another place, and we started looking at a few of our state clients here. And I kind of, given the nature of some of our confidentiality, I don't really talk about what agencies they are, but there are
We don't
quasi
need it.
agencies and executive branch agencies. So I was working with both of them, and they said, can you come help us here? Can you come help us there? I had a subcontract with Salesforce for services to go do that work, and it just started growing. Then I landed a couple direct contracts, and I thought it was going to be, I'm at the age where I'm looking toward retirement now, not necessarily growing another business. And then we started working on some more pieces of work together. The next thing I know, we had 3 people, and then we started competing. And then this last fall, as we were growing, we're up to about 9 people, and I got with my leadership team, and they were saying, hey, listen, like, let's actually go drive this thing. Let's go grow it again. And I said, are you sure? Right. It was the same question I asked the company when they said, can you sell $5 million? I'm very fortunate. I think I've had folks tell me I can, I can sell anything to anybody. And especially when I'm passionate about it. And I really like this integration stuff we do with MuleSoft. So we kicked it off and started growing, and we competed for a couple of statewide contracts, and we most recently won a statewide contract for the Salesforce Center of Excellence here in Indiana. We've been invited to bid on those same contracts in other states. So we're 18 people right now, and we did We just did just under 2.5 million in revenue last year. It looks like we're going to do about three and a quarter, maybe 4 million this year, depending on what more closes. So we're on that growth again, and smashing the gas pedal down. And there are moments I wake up and go, did I really want to do this again? Because it's a lot of hours. But that's kind of that's the backstory on where Corvano came from and what we're doing.
So let's go back to the beginning. So 2016, you set up the business, although you were still working at iLabs.
That's right.
And so typically, I ask people where they are on the spectrum. One end of the spectrum is you see an economic opportunity and you're like, this is why I'm going to start the business. The other end is I'm passionate about this. I'll figure it out and the money will take care of itself. It sounds like that was more of you saw an economic opportunity.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. There was this gap that was going on. There aren't a lot of veteran businesses. Well, that's not fair. There are a number of veteran businesses, but not in technology. There are very few of us. And I was looking at this market and looking at some of the announcements, and I went, well, that would be a great way for me to dip my toe in the water and see whether or not I can make a go at this. And so it made a lot of sense. And so absolutely, it was economic opportunity that drove it.
Then in 2019, you left iLab and you were ready to go. And of course, COVID, as it did,
Right.
destroyed everything. But
Right.
at that point, there's three things that everybody says you need to have when you start a business. You need to have a well-written and accurate strategic plan. You need to have 6 months of savings, and you need to have a clear understanding of what and for how much your prospects will buy things. Like of those three things in 2019, how much did you have?
All three of them. Yeah,
Wow, you're
absolutely
the
all three
second
of
one
them.
out of 182 episodes.
Yeah. Wow. That's wow. After running a business for somebody else for that number of years and growing it like we did, all of those things became, exceedingly obvious.
Right.
And I'll tell you the thing in 16 that jumped out at me, there were three things I saw happening in the technology market that were driving everything. It was this conversation of what was going to happen with artificial intelligence, because it was just a discussion. Right? It was just a discussion at the time. We were trying to decide whether or not vehicles could even make it down a closed course, self-piloted. So it was
Right.
artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and cloud services. And those three things and how they interact they were in every single conversation. iLab was strictly a software quality assurance company, but even in the testing side of things that we were doing, I saw all of these things popping up, and I said, well, if we can satisfy that need, and cloud services was the first one, right? How do you move from on-premise stuff and give up owning you got a box with blinky lights sitting in a closet on your premise, to getting things into some type of cloud service? And what the heck was the cloud anyway? So I kind of triangulated on that and we were going to be a services company. So I knew the services numbers inside out. And I was really good at calculating all in costs for resources, targeting how much per hour folks were willing to pay for it. Salaries, a website called salary.com did a great job of kind of estimating what folks were going to cost me. I knew benefits better than I ever cared to. So all in costs were pretty simple. And then what does it take to get people to come work for you as a services company? There was this niche in the market of who would buy from us. And the plan was, let's start with cloud services and then partner for AI and cybersecurity. And so that was kind of where we were steering it to. The commercial world wasn't buying anything, and the government was only buying from folks that had they already had contracts in place, and they were expanding old contracts, not awarding new ones. And so I had it. There was just no way to execute it.
So
And
let's talk about that. So you have all this stuff lined up. You have all kinds of knowledge. You've got experience. You clearly can sell, right? But what are some of the things that you learned, 2019, 2020 as you rolled out? What are some things that you didn't think you needed to know that you all of a sudden discovered, oh my gosh, I got to know that?
So being a GI, right? I'm an enormous fan of Sun Tzu, right? And all the teachings of Sun Tzu, right? Know yourself, know your enemies, 1,000 battles you shall not lose. And
Yep.
so another GI thing is no plan survives first contact with the enemy, right?
Yes.
And so even though you know it, what I had to do was step back and pivot and go, well, that plan didn't work because my target market isn't buying, my alternate target market isn't buying, and we're just not the entire purchasing market twisted. So the one thing you can't be afraid of is you got to have an alternate plan to how you're going to generate revenue. And my backup plan was always, well, I'll just go bill. If I can't go sell something that I can hire people and have them go do it, I'm good at strategic plans. I had a number of relationships I had built over the years at an executive level. I was on the Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce, Indy Chamber board for about 6 years, and so I reached out to a series of senior folks I knew that said, "Hey, I'm trying to get this thing off the ground. What do you need help with?" And I think you can't be afraid to just go plow, right? And so I was able to pick up a couple of things. And I ran into a bit of a bump in the road of the rules can change. The all of the rules went straight out the window in 2020 and 2021. Nobody followed the rules. If you had a contract, you could do it. If you didn't, you didn't. There was this mandatory clause that a certain percentage of every contract that goes out from the state of Indiana was supposed to have a veteran business on it. And they simply didn't follow those rules. And like everything, the answer was COVID, right? And so you just throw the rules out the window, and then suddenly you're going, wow, I've got to go do something different, right? And not be afraid to go do something different. And the other thing then is to look at when you go, you have to have a certain amount of money you're willing to invest, right? So I grew up pretty poor. I grew up pretty poor in Marion. I was the last of 8 kids by a long way, and my mother, if she was still alive, would be 100 this year, and my father would have been 107. He started as a coal miner at 12 years old in West Virginia. Was a World War II vet. My mother worked on a sawmill in Missouri, and then was a, did public servant work as well. She worked at the Veterans Administration. And so when you learn how to not have money, you got to remember it. And so we were good about, eat one nut, put 3 away. So we had money put away, and I could have kept going in 21, right? But there comes a point where you have to say, here is my fallback plan, right? And the fallback plan is you never ever allow your lifestyle to expand into your maximum income. You have to decide what lifestyle you're going to grow to and stop. And that's it.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it gets put away, no matter how attractive it looks, because you don't know when a COVID is going to show up and suddenly what you thought was going to happen didn't. Also, making sure that employees that are coming into a startup understand that it is a startup and it's all risk, and you have to understand the risk you're taking. You have to sell the story, but you also have to be prepared for what the fallout's going to be.
Yeah. Those are all great lessons. Although I will say the big lesson, and this comes up every episode almost, and Lorraine Ball's a past client of mine. She was like the 3rd episode. She said, "You're never in the business you think you're in. You're in the selling of the business you think you're in. Once you sell it, then you can be in the business. But until you sell it, you're not in that business." And
Amen,
it
brother.
sounds like,
That is absolutely it. Yes.
yeah, it sounds like you knew what you wanted to sell, but then through the window, threw the rules out. Now you can't sell that. So you went to backup. And when you realize that, hey, that's going to be a tough sell too, you just went to the second backup, which is
That's
what
right.
you got to do.
And go do whatever was necessary. I sold a data center strategy to one of the hospitals here who had a great data center and didn't realize the asset they had. I sold planning on how to build a government business to folks who weren't in the government business, and they saw this COVID money, and my first thing with them was, so understand that if you don't have a contract today, you're not going to get one. At best, it's 6 months to a year to go do it. And they said, sure, I'll hire you to do that. And then 1 month in, they're like, where's the business? And I went, remember when I said it's 6 months to a year?
Yeah.
And so, it was consulting with it. And so I bounced around a bit, right? Doing that kind of consulting. And, when you've grown a business that was very successful and folks see it, I think folks want the outcome of change. They don't want to go through the change, right?
Yes.
When you tell them, here's how to change if you want to hit this number, you've grown to this size. If you want to hit the next number, you have to foundationally change how you're running. Your team may have to change, all those things.
Yes. Yeah. Do you get, and that's kind of my next question is, if somebody comes to you and says, I'm starting my own thing, how do you handle that conversation?
Oh my gosh, it happens every day, especially in the veteran space, right? So
Yeah.
the first thing is you got to tell them a good idea is not a business plan, right?
Yes.
Let's see how good the idea is. However long you think it's going to take to grow, triple it, right? It's 3 times as long, because I had and I will tell them the COVID story. I had a
Yeah.
captured market. I had the relationships with all the leaders. I had folks. I had 2 contracts lined up ready to go, and I delayed starting them because I wanted to take a little bit of a break, right?
Yeah. Perfect. Great decision,
And
by the way.
right, exactly, right.
Yeah.
Don't wait. If they say never talk past the close, never talk when they
Right.
say yes, sign the contract, right? And be prepared to fail. Be prepared to be rejected over and over again.
All right. So we're at 22 minutes, which is a little bit long, but let's go to this. If, if 2026 Gary could sit down next to 2019 Gary and say, hey, listen, tomorrow you're opening your business, right? Million things you can do. But here's the thing you need to do first. What's the thing that need to do first?
So the hardest thing was you are not your position, right? So I'm the managing director of a business that has grown. We have been recognized as this growing thing. And I had so much hubris, it was ridiculous. I would tell that Gary, take your pride, stick it in your back pocket and sit on it and go sell and bill right now. You don't get a rest. Go get the contract done right now. Don't wait. When the
That's
opportunity is
perfect advice.
when it strikes, go hammer it. You smash the gas pedal. Don't ever confuse sales with delivery. Say yes, close it, go figure out where the people are, and go. As a startup, you have to do it.
That I that perfect advice. You can't add anything because that's in the end, that's what you have to do.
Yeah,
It
and
doesn't.
and when you don't stick, always stick to the basics. Sell. Figure out how to deliver, and then mature your model as time goes along.
Yes, money fixes all the problems.
Cash flow is king, bro. Cash flow
Yep.
is absolute king, which is why, man, Citizen State Bank foundationally changed things for me. They are a phenomenal group. And if you're a small business and you're banking with anybody else, you're foolish. Go find them today. And that is not a
There you
paid
go.
announcement.
Nah, not at all. But I can tell you that I have heard that same statement from multiples of their clients. So yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap up. Thanks for being a guest.
Happy to, bud.
All right. And for people who are listening, 3 ways you can help us. Hit subscribe, leave a review, share an episode. You want to learn more about Gary? Go into the show notes. We'll have information on how to contact him, some books he recommends. And we'll be back next week. Until then, stay focused, keep working, stay profitable.